Hello, welcome to a live kerfuffle break on Deprogram with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. Today is Monday, October 3rd. Welcome to the best month of the year, especially here in Texas. I love October. All the butterflies are out, the monarchs, the bees. Oh, the town siren. We started too soon. You guys can hear it. That's okay. I'll do the announcements right quick before I introduce my guests. We have book club finally have a date, and you still have time to read the book. We're still giving you enough time. We've been reading Political Ponerology. This is the latest edition of the book with a foreword by Michael Rectenwald, which is the one I highly suggest getting. And I've heard this one you can't find on Audible, but it's on YouTube. However, this book, I would suggest you just go in for a hard copy because it's the kind of book where you want to take a lot of notes. It's about the science of evil, psychopathy, and the origins of totalitarianism. If you like true crime, if you're fascinated by true crime, if you're fascinated by cluster B personality disorders, if you are in awe at what's happening in the world with ideology, totalitarian ideology like social justice, this book kind of ties it all together. It's incredible. And our book club date, our discussion, if you want to be a part of the discussion, will be Sunday, October 23rd at 3 p.m. Texas time. We'll be putting a link up to that in the book club Facebook group and on Locals. We'll let you know about it. But I hope you join us. Okay. And if you like the show, please consider supporting. We have a Patreon, we have a Locals, and a Subscribe Star. Without further ado, my guest today is a man who is very hardworking. In my experience, having hung out with him, runs a lot of things, has a lot to say about tech and censorship. He is the co-founder of Mythinformed Milwaukee, which, as you guys know, has been permanently banned from Twitter. He also works with minds.com. Please welcome my friend Sean. Hello.
Hey, Keri, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on.
Who did your intro, that cartoon?
So the song my husband made, which is Anthony Garcia music, and he's going to be putting out a full-length version of that song, which is funny. Like, I think the whole song's not going to have lyrics, except at the end it'll say deprogrammed, like tequila.
Oh, okay.
Like the song. But the intro is actually a Betty Boop cartoon, and it's in the public domain. So a lot of the Betty Boop cartoons ended up in the public domain, and this one is the one where Bimbo joins a cult. And I thought it kind of deprogrammed is about leaving a cult, and it was like I really liked that. Yeah,
I get it. Yeah, those cartoons are always so trippy. Like, I can't imagine like a DMT trip and then watching one of those. Like I think you lose your mind. Like those.
Yeah,
it was a different time back then. It was a different time. But
yeah, there's one where that I was thinking of using instead of this one. I ultimately went with this one, but there's one where Betty Boop goes to sleep and ends up in hell, and that one's so creepy and trippy.
Wow.
Like you're like, yeah, they were.
Those are what kids watched.
I know.
Like that's so funny. Like we had like Looney Tunes, and like, we can poke fun, and I'm sure we will at the woke at some point in this interview, but there were some things that were a little over the line back then where, like
with Looney Tunes.
Yeah, with like the depictions, because I was like, the Japanese and like the depictions of Japanese people. It was propaganda. I mean, a lot of it, it was just strange cartoon propaganda. But
yeah, they did put a lot of. We did an episode on Deprogrammed of my Wednesday night show was about pop culture with my friend Mystery Chris, and he loves talking about like going back through history and looking at propaganda in film and cartoons. And they did a lot of pro-American and pro-war stuff.
Yeah, it's weird.
Now that you're saying that, I recall, didn't Bugs Bunny dress up as like an Asian bunny or a?
He may have. I just
like
remember.
Girl bunny.
Oh, he definitely dressed. Yeah, you can't do that anymore, right? You can't. Yeah, he did. He dressed as the girl bunny to. I think it was like to trick Elmer Fudd. I forgot, but
yeah.
Can't do that anymore.
Yeah, I remember him just like batting his coquettish bunny eyes or something.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I read what Josh Slocum wrote. That's it's crazy. It's like, you know, when we lost the Mythinformed Twitter account, it's kind of nuts, right? Because it's like so much time. It's like doing the podcast. It's like you put so much time into creating content for it and like putting it out there and doing all that. And in one fell swoop, they can just come in and, you know, erase you. That's why, you know, working with Minds has been such a breath of fresh air. I mean, you know, we at Minds, we still respect the First Amendment, and, you know, big tech, they're just at a point where they can just erase you and ghost you, and you have little to no recourse. Like we have, we did the appeal process. You know, Ron Coleman actually wrote it for us. He's with Harmeet Dillon's firm.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. He's awesome. Like, so he helped us write the appeal and stuff, but there really is no appeal process, you know. And what's going on with Josh is even worse, because this is the dark side of cancel culture. This is where, you know, they start going for your job and they start going for you. And
well, let's tell people about that, and then we can get into, I do want to talk to you about what Minds is doing and about just like the state of censorship and tech where it's at. But this morning I woke up to see this and talk to Josh briefly about it. He covered it on his show last night at the very end of his show. I'll just read it for anybody who may be listening and not watching the screen. He says, I do not have details to share right now. This is Josh Slocum from the Disaffected podcast. I do not have details to share right now, but I am being forced out of my job of 20 years by a woke mob within and without the organization that I work for, Funeral Consumers Alliance. It's a nonprofit. Think of it as Consumer Reports, but only for the funeral and death transaction. FCA's largest member organization, People's Memorial Association, put out a release on Friday demanding that the FCA board fire me, quote, hold me accountable, end quote, hold accountable the entire local volunteer leadership for not being woke. They pulled their funding and are at least tacitly encouraging other member organizations to pull their funding. PMA has called me racist, transphobic, and misogynist. They are extorting the FCA board of trustees. This is woke. This will happen to you and to your job too if you let these people take over. So he's losing. I mean, this is the extreme version of beyond just being censored online, which he has been. He's been permanently banned on Twitter, just like you guys, just like Mythinformed. But now they're coming for his job, which is, I mean, the thing I have to say about it is, this is why I say when people are afraid of speaking out, I understand why. I used to be afraid, and and the fears are based on they're very real. They're founded on stuff like this. I mean, you could lose your job. You could, if you have kids, you could lose your means of being able to provide for your family momentarily until you find a new job. Like, you could put your safety at risk, your family's safety at risk. But this is exactly why people are afraid. But I also think it's why people need to speak out despite their fear, because the more, I'd really think the more, if everybody who had problems with social justice ideology spoke despite the fear, I don't think they'd be able to get away with this anymore.
Right. I agree. And but it is scary, you know, and where it really hurts you, I mean, like in the professional world and, you know, whatever, as an entertainer, selling insurance, whatever, reputation's huge. And that's essentially what they're doing. And, you know, I you know, if it's woke, if it's whoever, like, I don't care what your ideology is. Like, I'm totally willing to have a conversation with you, but whoever it is, when you start going after people's livelihoods, like, that's beyond the pale. I've in previous work, in my previous work life, I've had awkward conversations with you know, managers and stuff, because, you know, some of the fallout with like some of the earlier events that we had like bled into some of our personal lives. And we had trolls like emailing our managers and saying,
You're talking about your Mythinformed events?
Yeah, I'd say, I think it was after MythCon 4 when we had Carl Sargon of Akkad and Thomas Smith, that debate. Like, that one went, you know, that one got pretty big. And, you know, as you would know, like, pretty much at these events and stuff, I'm not, you know, I'm not front and center for a reason, you know, like, because it is scary. And when you have, you know, a job that you're trying to protect, there's just crazy people that will go to that level. And
Yeah.
the mob mentality is, we got to stop rewarding the mob mentality. Like it's never a good thing. It doesn't matter what, what your activism is, don't try and destroy people's careers. Like that's beyond the pale, in my opinion.
Yeah. He pointed out in his post that it's mostly women, which has been my experience too, that a lot of the leaders of woke, the ones who are really the vicious ones who form these cancel culture mobs and go after people, tend to be women. I've noticed that. I'll say that as a woman. Maybe it's
Interesting.
easier for me to say that, but yeah, in my case, I knew I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. I had my own company, so I didn't have a
Yeah.
boss, but I had built a career because I was in woke. I had built a career working with woke comedians, and I was
Yeah.
known as being woke. That was like what I was known for and who I repped, and so I just left it. And it was a different situation. It wasn't like forced out, although I couldn't have kept doing it if I wanted to speak, but it was like, okay, I'm going to say what I want. And ever since then, I've worked more of, I would say, like gig jobs and
Yeah.
things like that. But even with gig jobs, Sean, like
Yeah.
I kind of like, I know that I work them because they're flexible, they're easy, they allow me to do the podcast, but and if I lost one, I could get another one pretty easily. But even with that, I don't want to lose the ones I have. So I keep my
Right.
jobs private.
Right.
Like what I do is kind of like, I don't put out there where I work because it's crazy. People come after, like, even a gig
Yeah.
job, they'll be like, I'm going to get you fired from your furniture gig or like your
But
dog sitting business. Like,
I agree, but like the crazy thing is they find it, like,
yeah.
and then if you look at what happened to libs of TikTok, where you have like the WAPO being the ones that are going, like her reputation in the career that she's in. I mean, that's really hard to come back from, because you don't want to be known as that person, even though you did nothing wrong, right?
Yeah.
There's always this like, oh, like you know what I mean? Like it's like guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
But
Isn't she lives at
yeah.
TikTok? Isn't she a realtor?
Well, I didn't want to I didn't want
Oh,
to do the
sorry.
for
Well,
them, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I believe so. And talk about reputation, like
yeah.
that's a line of
Yeah,
work where
they
you have
outed her from what I recall.
yeah.
They outed her,
Mhm.
and it's like whatever
That's very
industry you're in, yeah, that's sort of it's that's it's not they make the mistake of saying, well, we're just protesting. They compare it to boycotts. We're protesting things we don't like or want. No, that's not true though.
yeah,
They go beyond just saying, well, I'm not gonna, like in Josh's case, I'm not gonna work with your funeral
yeah,
nonprofit. Then they go beyond that and they're like, not only am I not going to work with you, I'm going to try and get you fired and take your
right.
livelihood and destroying people, like destroy
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Like I said, when your activism, doesn't matter what it is, when your activism gets to that point, then you've crossed the line, and and I think there needs to be some kind of rules. And I think that should be one of the rules, where it's like, you don't do that. And I think, and people on social media that are like egging those people on should also like, they're a part of it. They're a part of that mob mentality, like I could see someone, if they have a bad take, what's the point of going out there and, publicly going after that person? I've never operated under that philosophy. I just don't think, I think it makes both people look bad, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like
We need
this is
to,
where they work. This is where, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what's cool, with Minds, having a platform that you don't have to worry about that. I'd say, like on the Mythinformed account, we were putting out a ton of content on there. We were having fun with it and stuff, but we were always kind of pushing the line to see where the line was, like with the COVID stuff and with some of the stuff you couldn't talk about. We're on YouTube, right, Keri?
We are on
Right.
YouTube.
Yeah. What can't we talk about right now? That's what we should be talking about.
We know.
That was my philosophy. It's like, what is it?
Yeah.
Do you still get dinged for the COVID stuff?
Not as much as
Okay.
I used to. So it's interesting because as they've relaxed on the narrative a bit, like the COVID origin, for example. Remember at the beginning of the COVID years when that was verboten, like you couldn't talk about anything
Couldn't talk
other than
Nope.
Yeah, the Lancet put out that stupid letter, that lying,
Yep.
that deceitful letter where they got all these scientists to sign it saying that they didn't have any conflict of interest when a majority of them did have a conflict of
Right.
interest. And
Right.
they said there's no way it came from a lab, right? And
Yeah.
so you couldn't even you couldn't even question the narrative of how where it came from. And then flash forward 2 years and they're like, well, maybe now there's mainstream news
Right.
articles saying, well, maybe it came from a lab, possibly. That sounds likely. So now you can kind of, I think they've relaxed on that a bit. But yeah, if people don't know, every video that you upload on YouTube as a content creator, every video that you upload, I have to go in. You go in after you do it. You have to self-report. So
Yep.
after this video with Sean today, I have to go in and self-report. And they have a whole list of categories for different things. Did you talk about any current event that is a sensitive event? Did you
Yep.
talk, and then for each of these categories, like, did you do any hate speech today? Anything that might be considered hate speech? And then for each of
Yeah.
these categories, you have to select how much you talked about it, a moderate amount, a medium amount, a lot,
Yeah.
like, and then based on your self-reporting, they go and evaluate you and they determine like, well, you're pretty good at self-reporting. You know, we're not going to ding you that much. Or like, hey, we don't agree with the way you reported. You
Right.
spoke a lot about a sensitive event today. So we're demonetizing you.
Yeah, and
It's
you never know the rules.
yeah,
They say they release like their updated TOS and stuff, but it's really hard to go through. And it's not like they're telling you, okay, you can't talk about the lab leak theory. And I remember a lot of the streamers at that time were freaked out. Like if you're on the show, they were like, do not mention the lab leak theory. Like even though they agreed with it, they knew they couldn't on YouTube specifically. I remember Twitter dinged us when I was just I put up a tweet and it was like ivermectin is safe. Or no, ivermectin saves lives. That's what it was.
oh, I
And
remember that. You
yeah,
were
and I was
always
like,
pushing buttons.
I know we were always trying to find out where's the line, where's the line. I guess we found the line, but yeah, it was always interesting trying because they don't tell you the rules. You know, I think that's one of the biggest problems. Like they can just turn it off. You know,
Yeah,
YouTube technically has the strike feature, but they can just take you down. You know,
yeah,
like what we do at Minds, it's like more of a democratic approach. So if there is a post that is questionable, people will vote on it, which I think is very smart. It's kind of what
yeah,
we do in the US.
yeah.
So I
So,
mean, yeah.
do you want to? Can you give me just? We started talking on text again recently after Nick Rekieta was
Yeah,
banned because he was another high profile permaban, and I fear that we've gotten so used to these that now when they happen, we're like,
I
yeah,
know.
here's another banning, here's another one.
I
So
know.
do you want to catch us up a little bit on like what happened with Ricada?
Um, so I don't know specifically what happened with Rekieta. I know YouTube, I think YouTube gave him a strike, right? And they took away some of his monetization. And now Twitter permabanned him. But again, like without knowing exactly where they are in the process, he may or may not get it back. It was for me, it was like good news seeing Alex Berenson win that court
Yeah.
case against Twitter. Because I remember, Megan, she went up, Megan Murphy, she went up and went to court.
Yeah.
But she lost,
She lost.
which was like, yeah, which was kind of scary. So I was picking her brain on, what those steps are. And then Berenson won. So that's really good. I mean, one of the things I think we're seeing that's a huge positive right now is how censorship is finally starting to hurt the big tech platforms. We'll call them big tech platforms, because you're seeing other platforms picking up those people. And that's what needs to happen. Like, if they're banning Tate, if they're banning, Russell Brand or all these people, like people are picking them up. And I think that's finally starting to hurt them. I don't know if you've noticed, like Facebook has started to try to pay their creators, because I think they understand like Facebook's dead. Like nobody uses Facebook like in a real way, like Twitter. I would argue, Twitter still has the traffic, and but yeah, you can't keep censoring these people and then expect to compete. I think that's my one white pill moment for everyone right now is we're seeing like the other platforms start to grow. And I think it's directly related to the censorship issue. So that and the monetization, like that's the other thing. I argue big tech censorship is scary, but like the payment processor censorship is even scarier, you know, when they can shut down your Stripe or they can shut down your payment processors or
Which
PayPal.
I had Sarah Higdon on Friday, and we were talking about that. PayPal and Venmo, they all at the same time just deplatformed Gates Against Groomers and said, sorry, you can't use us to process your payments. I have a super chat here from Pirate Tomsky. You guys give it up for Pirate Tomsky. Working hard.
Hey, Pirate. Thanks, Pirate.
Thanks.
And we got the 10 fake money. Thanks, Pirate.
Yeah. I call those lira. He's giving us 10 lira. There is some hope in the UK. PayPal canceled the free speech union, but after a lot of backlash by the public MPs, they are reinstated. Now talks to make it illegal to deplatform people like that. I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, that's a good step, but the UK, I think the UK is worse off than the US right now. I mean, like their hate laws and hate speech and people literally getting arrested for jokes, that's an issue. I mean, it's good. Hopefully they can get something done, like, you know, at the top, but it's scary. It's kind of scary in the UK, honestly. You know, I think, who was it? Kristen, I forget his name, stand-up comic. He does the Kristen Constantine. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Constantine Kissin?
Constantine, yes, yeah. So like him and they do what's that podcast called?
Trigonometry.
Trigonometry, yeah. So they're actually
moving. Game.
It kind of sounds like they're moving to the US, do comedy here because of some of that. You know, like
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the comedy scene in the UK is very scary. Like a lot of it's underground because they know, like, you know, I mean, people forget in this country, you have like George Carlin and, you know, people like that literally got arrested for doing comedy on stage. And the UK has
Lenny Bruce.
Some Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Minds? Like, and I'll confess, so you can tell me why I need to spend more time looking at it. I'll confess, since we last talked, I haven't spent time on there because there's a lot of reasons.
You're too busy.
Yeah, but I get whenever there's a new platform, and I think a lot of people come up against this. They're like, oh, I got to learn this new one. And I was having trouble figuring out how to sync my tweets on the back end, and then I just didn't come back. So I know, though, that you guys, I know ideologically, I like what you're doing and that you're for free speech, but why don't you tell us a little bit about like what's going on with Minds, what makes it a good alternative, and why do you think it'll be able to compete? Because that's the other question, is people are like you said, what if I put all this work into this platform and then it like in the case of Twitter, what if I put all this work in and then I get banned? But in the case of Minds or Gab or any of these new ones, it's like, what if Parler, like what if it's not even around after a while?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because, you know, we've had a lot of conversations on this, and it's like, you know, you're always trying to find out what makes you unique versus the other platforms. And there's a couple things. So Twitter and obviously big tech, Facebook and stuff. I mean, you know, they're getting pressured a lot to censor a lot of people. It was really interesting, you know, when Zuckerberg was on with Rogan and he was talking about how the FBI came to him and suggested that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. So, you know, they're actually getting pressured a lot by, you know, whether it be the right or the left to censor people, which is a little scary. And I think it's interesting too. You're seeing like more of the conservatives these days standing up for free speech, which historically in my lifetime doesn't make any sense. That makes zero sense. We're in backwards world. But you're seeing these big tech platforms get this pressure from, you know, the top, and you know, Minds, we don't have to worry about that. I talked to Bill about that, actually, and I was talking to Bill Ottman and Jack Ottman, the CEO and the COO. I said, what would we do if the FBI came and, you know, and told Minds we had to shut something down? And, you know, like you have to look into it. And I think what Facebook really screwed up on is they should have talked to the New York Post. Why didn't they talk to the New York Post? That would have been the first step I would have done, you know, like when you have a big story like that. But anyway, so So outside of like, the establishment having control over platforms, that's a huge advantage for us. I get the argument of people are busy, and there's like 16 different social media platforms out there. And one of the nice things we do is we do offer the tethering, where if you have a Twitter account, YouTube account, you can just tether the accounts, and it'll automatically post to Minds, which is really cool. And it saves content creators time, like people that are putting in hours a day. I think, I talk to some people and they're like, they want to be content creators, but they don't understand, like, you have to put in like literally 15 hours a day. Like Tim Pool's a guy that like literally puts in 15, 16 hours a day. He's always working. Like you always have to be creating. So it's hard having all these different accounts. So that's one cool feature. But I think one of the frustrations for users, especially on the big tech platforms, is the comment section. I think you'll see a lot of people that comment even on Twitter, even on Facebook, and they don't get responses from their creators. What we're doing with Minds is we're actually going to be in beta for this week, where we're calling it Super Minds, where you can do like a super chat to a creator or to one of your friends or whatever, and it's going to give them an offer, so they will actually respond to whatever the question is or whatever. So we're working on ways to connect the users with the creators that they like, and Twitter doesn't, they don't, like big tech, they don't care about any of that. Yeah, and then we also have, for the nerds out there, we do have like the crypto option, which I was talking about crypto today, and like that's definitely not my strong suit. But I do understand the idea of having like a decentralized version of currency, especially with like payment processors and things shutting people down, which is scary, and that kind, I don't know if you remember, like Patreon was kind of one of the first ones that was doing this early on with Jordan Peterson and Carl Benjamin. And there's a whole bunch of other creators that were making a ton of money, this is their job, their livelihood, and they just, pulled the switch. And so yeah. Oh, Keri, I think I lost you.
Oh, I have some
There we go.
construction happening here today, so I was muting myself for a little bit.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, you guys, I was calling.
Was I talking to myself the entire, like?
No, I heard you,
Oh, okay.
but you couldn't hear
Okay,
me.
all right.
Yeah, I
I thought it
muted
was
my
one of those
microphone.
where,
No, so I wanted you to tell us, because you were talking about crypto and stuff. Will you tell us a little bit about the referral program for content creators or anyone that's on Minds who wants to
yeah.
bring people over? What is the referral program?
Yeah, so one of the huge benefits. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but like on YouTube right now, so that 10 fake euro dollars that you got, YouTube took 30% of that, like right up front. And I've always wondered too, because like depending on what you talk about, if we're talking about COVID or whatever, videos will get limited monetization, which is annoying, really annoying for creators too. So I always wondered like if they take even more because of that, but whatever. But I know they take 30% on the chats, right? So with the Super Minds, we're only going to take 10%. So we're trying to give the money back to the creator, the person that actually made the money. And for the referral program, what we do is anyone can do this. Like if some people that you want to sign up to Minds, when you create an account, you have a referral code. You can give that person that code. And the nice thing is, like any of the Supermind monetization that comes in, you'll get 5% of that. So we reserve 5% for people that refer people to the platform. So it's our way of like trying to motivate people to, get the word out on it. And it's, one of the things I always argue, so like with the Mythinformed Twitter account, for instance, like we had some massive tweets, like we had some really, really viral stuff. And I'd say, we'd get like 39 million impressions in a month, right? So something like that. And we made $0. We made no money. They have the tip option, but it doesn't work. It's just not a good platform because the people that the creators that you like, if you do want to support them, it makes it very tough on Twitter. you really can't. They did like the super follow thing, but then that's like, for me, like it's even more work for the creator because now they have to come up with like brand new content that's, you know, specific to like a very small percentage of people.
Yeah, I don't get the super.
It's super,
It's like for videos, it makes sense
yeah,
if you want to have like, well,
yeah,
these videos are just for paid subscribers, right? And we're going to put time
yeah.
into doing these videos. But who is like, I'm going to tweet some things that are just if you pay me? Like,
I
what?
know,
Like, I
I
don't get
know.
that.
I do argue though, if they did monetize the chat, like their chat, like it would look crazy. It would be pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and what you can do with Supermind too, it's like, say you are a brand, or say like, you know, I've hosted many events in the past. As an event promoter, you want to, you know, you want to support the people that you like, and then also, you know, come up with a way to, you know, advertise whatever the thing is that's coming up. With the Supermind, you can do that pretty easily too. Like the creators can set their minimums, and they're like, hey, you know, if you want to shout out whatever, you know, this is what the cost is. Which is nice, you know, because it's always hard, you know, figuring out what that is. And I think there's some people out there, like if we had sponsors come to us and like, hey, you know, sell this X thing, you know, great. How do we get that done? So, yeah, so I'm really excited about Supermind. And you know, the other thing, what Minds is doing that the other platforms aren't, are live events. Like, I think maybe like YouTube, like, do they still do VidCon? I don't know. What, they were never really like associated with them, but they were like heavily like endorsed VidCon. I don't know if
Yeah.
they still do or not. But yeah, we have a live event series. We just did one in New York with some fantastic
That
people.
was amazing. You
Oh,
guys had,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, the best lineup. Like
It
you
was a great
had,
lineup. I know. I give Bill so much credit because I've been booking for, you know, over a decade, and Bill Ottman lined up a lot of those people. I was like, wow, this is such a great lineup. Like Tulsi Gabbard on stage with Tim Pool and James O'Keefe, and you know, Stephen and
Cornell
Majid.
West. Like,
Yeah, Cornel West and you know, Destiny and Majid going at. I thought that was great. I've that was really, really funny. It's always fun for me watching Destiny, and he brought up a really good point. You know, it's not necessarily left versus right, because that's the idea of our events, is we're trying to bring a whole
people
swath
together.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, like different ideas and stuff. Um, and he's actually right. Like, there is this establishment versus anti-establishment narrative that's happening right now. And what's interesting is the conservatives were always kind of in my experience growing up in the 90s, the conservatives were they were the establishment, and
Yes.
the liberals were, you know, the rock and roll anti-establishment. I don't know if it was Donald Trump. I think he was like a big factor of this, but like that switched, you know,
Yes.
and it's weird. So,
It's upside, well, it's what you said before. You never
yeah,
thought conservatives would be the ones that are defending free speech, but it is upside down. We're in
yeah,
an upside down world, and you know, things ebb and flow.
Stranger
For
Things.
every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And
Yeah,
because the left has become so consumed by this authoritarian ideology, that social justice, woke, whatever you want to call it,
yeah,
which the left has been consumed by authoritarianism before, so is the right, like different
yep,
types of authoritarian ideology. It happens to be woke ideology right now, and because that's happened, it's like that's a totalitarian, authoritarian belief system. It's like it does not allow for free speech. So who's going to be? It just happens. It just so happens it's the conservatives now who are saying, "Hey, this affects us because we're not in
right,
that belief system." Like, so we want to be
right,
able to say what we want to say, and it could
yeah,
easily go back. I mean, who knows? Like in 100 years, it could be the opposite.
right. It's very strange, but you know, Destiny brought up a really good point. Um, so like thinking about like booking now, I'm trying to like figure out who those establishment voices are, and it's really hard because like a lot of them don't want to have the
They
conversation. You
don't.
know, they really don't, and it's really difficult to get them there. He's one guy. He's great. He'll show up and, you know, argue for the establishment all day long. It's great. But yeah, at our next one, so we are planning another one. We have another one coming up. It's going to be next April. and it's going to be at the Vulcan Gas Company, which for those who aren't familiar, that's where Joe Rogan performs and Tony Hinchcliffe and Keri, I'm sure you've heard of it before. Big comedy club in Austin. Yep. Yeah, so we're going to be there. We're going to do something similar. We're going to do, we'll have, we'll do like a live podcast. We'll do a panel. We'll have we did comedy at the last one in New York. It was Jamie Kilstein, Ryan Long, Chrissy Mayer, and
Alex
Tyler Fisher. Yeah. So we did some stand up last time and we really liked that. I think that's a really cool thing because it is one of those practices that you have to protect. You have to, even if they bomb, you got to let people up there, to say things and not take offense to it. And
I love that you had comedy. Since you're going to be in Austin, which likes to call itself the music capital of the world, I know a lot of places call themselves that, but you might consider adding a music night too, which could be fun. Just for people that get in early. Yeah. Just to hang out and whatever. I just love that you're doing Austin because it's so thoroughly woke now and you're going to be coming in to shake it up. There's a group in Austin I just heard about. You need to look these guys up. It's like an underground group. They're called Based in Austin.
Oh, cool.
Get it? Based in Austin?
Yeah, Based. Okay. I like it. Are they going to see the bats too?
I don't know, but they're like secretly based people in Austin. I just heard it. Some guy on a plane told me about them, like my seat partner. So,
well, it's interesting, right? Like Austin, kind of what I'm seeing, it's what Joe Rogan and Tony Hinchcliffe and those guys are doing is they're kind of sucking the comedy out of LA and they're bringing it to Austin. Like there's a ton of people that have moved to Austin now because of the Joe Rogan effect. I know he has his new club opening soon out there. So, it'll be interesting if it is woke to see like how that clashes with comedy, because they don't exist well together.
It's a clash, let me tell you. But that's great. I love that that's happening to try and like save that city, which I don't know if I think it's salvageable, but I like that's happening because there's been no pushback in Austin for so long. And I'll tell you, like the comedy, like you said nobody uses Facebook, but with one caveat, Facebook, I find, is where a lot of the moms are, like the boomers, and there a lot of like normies are still there, and a lot of woke people. And there's a lot of groups there, and the groups they can do a lot of good or a lot of damage. There's a lot of crazy damaging private groups on Facebook. But anyway, there are some groups for like comedy and live music in Austin. Thoroughly woke. Like these are little tiny totalitarian communities that thrive where they're you know what these communities are like. It's like what we're talking about Josh Slocum's story, where they're just like reinforcing this very closed-minded ideology among all the artists who are in the groups. And people stay quiet because they want to get gigs. And so that makes me very excited to hear that there's like more comedy.
Yeah, based on just I mean, I obviously don't live there, but just kind of what I'm seeing, who's performing and like who's there. Yeah, and you're right. Yeah, I do. That's what it's funny. What Facebook did well was they bought Instagram, and the groups and their chat feature. Those are the two things. Yeah.
I just want to highlight this. Laura says, I guess I'm a boomer. LOL. Laura, that's what the Generation Z calls all of us. I'm Gen X. But they call me a boomer.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that when you said it, I was like, I don't want to. But I know what you mean. Yeah, there's a lot of like, because we remember when it first came out. I mean, do you remember when Facebook first came out? And like people were putting crazy stuff up there. Like we didn't understand what it was. We're just putting up. People had their phone numbers on there. I don't know if you remember that. They had their like addresses and their phone numbers, and it was it was a different world. It was like that. And then when YouTube first started, and YouTube was really based off of like response videos, which they kind of like still do kind of, but that was like the big thing for YouTube. What I remember was like the response videos. And I will give it to YouTube, like a lot of the people you see, like the Tim Pools of the world, were able to make it because YouTube actually paid their creators. And I think that's a huge problem. Like with Twitter and Facebook, they don't, and people are just voluntarily spending their entire lives on something that they don't get any type of any type of monetary value from it. Like people argue, oh, you get soft power. Well, that only goes so far, when you're spending 15 hours on your phone. It's kind of crazy. It's like, when I think about it, it's like, how in the world did Twitter convince everyone to literally create content for them like all day, every day, and not get anything for it? It's an interesting model.
I think it's a combination of like people's narcissism and self-interest, but also not just that though, like wanting to participate in the public square and have input and express ideas and opinions. And they really took advantage of that, I think, in the COVID years during lockdown, as all the social media platforms, it's like that's where people are going, even more so for the public square, because they're not getting out. A lot of people were not going outside and mingling and going to parties and going to bars or going, even to church. I know people that quit going to church. So yeah.
To go on social media?
Well, no, I mean, social media, I think people became more reliant on social media to be a part of the conversation,
gotcha.
like during the COVID years, because they weren't socializing in real life as much. I mean, I didn't really stop in Texas. It depended on where you were at, but I'm outside of Austin, what I call real Texas. And, people were still going out. My church started Church on the Square started during the pandemic, like during the lockdowns. But I know a lot of people who, I mean, they did not go outside. They did not interact with people. It was like they became much more dependent online, Twitter.
Yeah, and I think we still feel it in the live event space. Like it's tough. Like the one we did in New York. I mean, I can't tell you. So when we were promoting it, we're getting everyone there. We gave out some free tickets to some local people, and they just fill out a form or whatever. And some of these stories were super sad. They were like, my husband's been laid off, can't get a job. It was so much unemployment was directly related to COVID. It was sad. And then when you were in New York, it was just very depressed. You can just tell like people are not coming out of their house. It was it the mayor? He was begging everyone to go back into the office and stuff because their economy is just requires it. It requires people to actually leave their house. And, so yeah, it was even the Beacon Theater. They still had, this was a couple months ago. They still had the COVID disclaimer on there saying, we can shut this event down at any time if there's another spike or whatever the case is.
Did you see the Trevor Noah, The Daily Show, just announced that he's departing and posted a photo of the final audience, and you look at the audience and they still have a mask policy. Blows my mind. It just looks like a cult. Everyone's sitting there with their mask on, you just see
I know.
I
know. Oh, so Trevor Noah's leaving The Daily? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Is he leaving or are they kicking him out? Because he was another guy. He was another guy that didn't go back to the office. Way after the pandemic, he was still doing the show from his apartment. I don't know if I was the whole, I think maybe they're back in the studio now, but he was forever after the pandemic, after the vaccines, after all of it. Oh, sorry. After all of it, he was he was still doing it from his home office. So I'm wondering if they just got kind of sick of that. That's interesting.
Kind of. I think that his ratings are, look at this here. I'm going to put this on the screen so you guys can see it.
Oh, this is hilarious. Yeah, let's see his ratings. He is just not a funny person. I just,
well,
I never
show you this picture. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me make it a little bigger.
Oh, Tim shared it. That's funny.
Yeah, Tim shared it. Trevor Noah announces to his cult he's stepping down. This clip was from yesterday. Look at all these faces. They're just, I mean, it does. It looks like a cult. That's like a religious cult.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. There was Saturday Night Live, I believe, still does it. Oh, what's that? What's her name? She has a daytime TV show now. She was in ET. Remember as a kid? What's her? I always forget her
Drew
name.
Barrymore?
Drew Barrymore. Yeah, she has
She has a
a
show?
television. Yeah, she has a show, and like her whole audience. If you search that, you'll find her her whole audience still wears the mask, and it's kind of like, like it's kind of gotten to the point where it's essentially wearing your politics on your face. I don't like, there's been enough science now that proves those type of masks don't do anything. The N95 masks, yeah, you can make an argument for those. You have certain masks that do very well, with those cloth masks have been proven. Berenson's back on Twitter, so I'm trying not to get you kicked off of YouTube here, Keri. But I mean, the science shows like they just don't work. They don't work, and
they knew that
it's
from
more
the
of
beginning too.
Yeah.
They knew that
It
from
was
the beginning.
when Fauci was like, "Don't wear a mask. It's only gonna be worse." And then he like backtracked. I think that's when he did that. I think he lost a lot of credibility, because you had a bunch of people that are like trying to figure out what's going on, and then you have him on television saying, "Don't wear a mask because it's only going to, it's not going to help and it can make things worse." And then he flips completely.
He said that multiple times in interviews
I
about
know.
don't wear it. And then the reason why I'm really like, to people, I'm like, come on, he was lying. It wasn't just because he basically, then he came out and he admitted, and he said that he said that he told people not to wear it because he privately he knew that they worked, but that he didn't want there to be a run on them at that time. And so
Yeah,
it's like,
that's
so, dude,
yeah.
you're admitting that
Or you lied.
lied.
Yeah, so
And
you
you're
lied.
saying, but here's my good reason for lying. And by the way, I don't
Exactly.
even believe your good reason, because in private communications, in his private emails to friends who wrote
Yeah.
him privately saying, hey, but should I get one? And he was like, no.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
no.
I remember like the early times when people didn't know what was going to happen. You had companies shutting down. You had, if a mask was going to help, people would wear it, whatever. And, I think that they just did such a terrible job on the messaging, and they really, instead of just being honest with everyone saying, hey, we really don't understand this, like a little honesty goes a long way. And, I think there's still people that believe it. I still think there are people. I see people all the time walking outside with masks on. I think there are some people that truly believe it. They are the true believers. But I also think there's some people that
It's their
use
virtue
it.
signal.
Yes. So if they're going to an event and they know it's, they're going to wear this thing on their face, it's no different than someone wearing like a MAGA hat on their head or whatever. It's like saying, this is my, these are my politics. And I'm not a huge fan of that virtue signal, but
No.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting, Spotify. So I don't know if you've noticed, like on the Rogan interview, Spotify still puts the COVID warning label on. I think we're kind of past that, but I think it took, like, the good thing was there was a lot of people that, even in the face of censorship, still had the conversations. Like the Dr. Robert Malones, the Peter McCulloughs, like they really did a good job of, like, even though they tried canceling them from everything and ruining their reputations, they really did a good job of at least getting the information out to people, saying, this is some accurate information. Alex Berenson, covering the information from the world. I mean, he was just covering what the other countries were saying. I mean, we should have that. And what was scary to me was the fact that big tech shut down that conversation. So, thank God we had the people like Joe Rogan. And I do give Spotify a lot of credit for that, because everyone was going after them for that. And they stuck to their guns, and they stuck to their principles. And you're seeing it a little with Netflix now too. I think they've done a 180 now, where, I think in the beginning they were listening to the outrage, especially like
The woke
surrounding
mob.
Chappelle. Yep. And now they're like, nope, find a new job. If this is, we're going to have Chappelle on, we're going to have comedy on, find a new job, so,
Which is what needs to be said. It's like, if you don't like it, So this, I did want to put this up on the screen since we mentioned it, but before I do, just really quickly, when we were just having that conversation about masks, a lot of people in the chat said they got disconnected by YouTube and it was buffering and they had to I don't know. I don't know if the
Yeah.
timing is just coincidental, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, and that's the thing though, and then you sound crazy, and like
Yeah.
there's so many people that have this conversation. The one thing that really came out of that Zuckerberg interview, in my opinion, that was like the thing, was the fact that they shadow banned that story. So it was interesting. If you listen to the Rogan interview, in the beginning, Zuckerberg saying, we don't shadow ban. And then he's like, well, then the FBI told us Russian information. So we, algorithmically downshifted the story. So people could, you could see it, but it wasn't getting picked up in the algorithm, right? That's what shadow banning is. Like,
Yes.
it was, I thought I was crazy. I'm like, wait, so they're saying they don't shadow ban, but they just shadow ban like one of the biggest stories that could have affected an election,
Remember Facebook had that leak. This was a couple years ago. Somebody at Facebook leaked an internal document of accounts of people that they were shadow banning. They didn't use the word shadow ban. They said they were down throttling engagement. The algorithm would down throttle the number of people who see your posts. And on the list, it was like Mike Cernovich, like Candace Owens. It was like a whole hit list of people that they were shadow banning, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And then you sound crazy when you're like, oh, hey, this post didn't do very well. It should have. Now there's an argument, and Zuckerberg made this argument in that interview too. Oh, maybe your content's not that good. So I'm totally agree with him on that. If you don't have a lot of engagement, if you don't have a lot of followers, and you put up, really bad content, odds are it's not going to do very well. But this was happening to major influencers who had followings, where you can see their posts that are normally this, now this, normally this, now this, because there's always like a base amount of impressions you're going to get. But yeah, then, so it makes them sound crazy. And I think it's super unfair.
They admit to it now.
Can't do it.
One of the times I got restricted on Facebook, I mean, and they admit it. They've changed the terms of service so many times. So this was a time where during the past 2 COVID years, I shared a link. I think it was Robert Malone talking about a peer-reviewed scientific study. Okay. They took the post down, even though it was a link to a reputable scientific magazine and a study that was done. They didn't like the results of that study, so they took it down. And then I got a notice saying that they updated their TOS. I should read the new TOS. So I read it, and it basically said they had added all this language that said that to summarize, even if what you post is factually true, even if it's factually true, if it could cause vaccine hesitancy, we will remove it. And then they said, so you're going to be banned for X number of days. Then when you come back, you're going to be, they didn't use the word shadow ban, but they told you in effect you're going to be like taken off for this many days. And then when you come back, you'll be back, but your posts are going to show up less frequently in people's feeds for this number of days, like shadow banning. They're saying like, then when you come back, there's a period of shadow banning that's going to happen. Okay. Thanks for finally admitting like, okay.
I know. And it's like, it's even funnier. Like what Twitter will do with some of them is they'll keep the post up, but no one is allowed to like or comment on it. And it can only be quote tweeted. And if it's like a video, it won't gain any views at all, even though it can be quote tweeted like thousands of times, but it won't gain any more views, which is crazy. It's like, what, like just delete it at that point. Like, what's the point? Like,
what's the point?
Yeah. At least, like they kept it up, but it's like, it's not going to do, it's literally shadow banned, like right in front of you.
Can I tell you, Sean, I appreciate you talking about this stuff with me because I continually, I'm reminded in various ways that there are people who watch my show who are still in the echo chamber. There are. And sometimes they watch to hate me. And I find out about that sometimes through angry messages. But I also find that like people will say the opposite, like very encouraging messages. Like, I started off hating you, and I started watching, and I learned this and this, and that's really
Yeah.
encouraging. So what I found is that a lot of people, especially on Facebook, to talk about who uses that platform, of the people that
Meta.
use Facebook, there's a lot of people that don't. They're so squarely in the echo chamber, they don't even know what we're talking about when we talk about shadow banning, censorship. They're like, "What do you mean?"
Interesting.
They don't even hear the stories about it because their
Yeah.
news doesn't give them these stories. And so I know it seems like for people who are like wrong thinkers or in my audience who know all this stuff, they're like, why were I know all about this. Why are we talking about this? They don't hear these examples. And when I have real life conversations with people in the real world who are in that echo chamber, and I told them that example of they took down a scientific study and they're like, really? That happens?
Yeah.
Yes, that
Mhm.
happens. And you don't hear about it because they don't want you to hear about it.
It's
Like,
crazy, right? It's absolutely crazy. And it's crazy that they can just control the narrative. And that's what's even scarier. And that's,
yeah,
yeah. And we saw it with COVID, and, we see it, we're seeing it with a lot of things. I mean, they kicked James Lindsay off. I mean, that wasn't by mistake. They know what James is talking about, and it's hard to refute. Instead of refuting them, they're just going to, erase them. And when we should be having the discussion. I mean, if there's enough people that are interested in whatever the topic is, we should have the discussion. And I
yeah,
think that's where the big tech platforms have lost their roots in what America was built on. We're not built on silencing people and censoring things that you don't like. You should, and that's my argument too. Like, that 8chan, like that crowd, they're a bunch of weirdos and stuff. Like, that stuff's crazy. And I don't think,
yeah.
that's never going to be mainstream. No one's ever going to support that. It's always going to be in its weird little thing. But at least with them doing it in the open, you can see how crazy it is. So, if you know what I mean, like when all we're doing, and, Bill Ottman actually, Minds, they actually did a really good study on this, like how censorship leads to extremism.
Mhm.
When you start kicking people off to a point where they don't have a lot of options and they do end up on 8chan or something like that, where it's like, chaotic, it leads to extremism instead of, bringing people back. I'm sure James Lindsay would love to have the conversation with Twitter on his research, but yeah, so it's we need to have these debates, and you can argue like maybe our economy, maybe the world's economy isn't as bad as it is today if we just had the discussion COVID early on, if we weren't trying to keep people safe by protecting them from information that's going to hurt them. Maybe Dr. Robert Malone and Fauci get together and they actually have a discussion like that. Could have helped us like immensely. Like we could have seen the values of ivermectin early. We could have seen like some of the stuff that was helping early on. But yeah, we just instead we chose to lock people down, separate them, and yeah, and feed them only the information that
That
we wanted them to feed. So
totalitarianism. I mean,
yeah.
that's
Well, it
this
was
book is
scary too.
really
Like, yeah, in the beginning. So like, I don't know if you remember, like in the beginning, the CCP, when COVID first broke out of Wuhan, the CCP was going in and like literally going to people's homes and arresting them for posting, their symptoms and what was happening to them on social media. I don't think we would support that. They were shutting down, like shutting down all their information. Like it was really hard to get a lot of the information out early on. And yeah, so I don't think, like just think about that's what the Chinese government does. That's not what the United States government does. We're different for a reason, like,
we're
so
supposed to be.
we're supposed to
Yeah.
be, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to do an update to this story. This is just I'm backtracking now, but I didn't put it up. You asked me about the ratings, and I found this
Oh, yeah.
news article. The Daily Show will continue, sans Trevor Noah, despite its low ratings. This is from September 30th of the New York Post. And then it goes on to say The Daily Show will soldier on following Trevor Noah's shocking announcement that he's leaving. Noah, 38, has been working with Comedy Central for, quote, for a long time to figure out how he could maintain the grueling late night pace. Insiders told the Post, while the internet was abuzz with theories that his sudden departure is due to the cable show's ratings. Quote, let's tell the truth here. Trevor Noah is leaving The Daily Show because the show can barely muster 400,000 views.
Yeah.
less than a third of its viewership from 2015.
Yeah. And that's sad too, because like Comedy Central used to be like the haven for comedy. It was like where I used to watch all the stand-up specials, you know, growing up. And obviously, you know, they invested in South Park. South Park's huge. And they still, you know, they defended South Park over the years, which is really good. But yeah, Trevor Noah he just wasn't funny. Like I don't know how many people I've seen a stand-up, but his stand-up's like even worse. Like the fact, like when they first announced that he got the job, I was just like really like blown away by it, because his stand-up is really, really bad. Like there's so many comics out there. So I don't know, maybe Comedy Central has a chance here to kind of redeem the last couple of years and put someone on there that's going to be really funny, you know, get like a Dave Smith, get someone that like understands what's happening and you know, can present in a funny way. And that's, you know, what what's his face, Stewart, that was his, you know, Stewart did a really good job on that show. He did, like, he, you know, obviously was very biased, but they did a really good job with it. You know, maybe we'll see. But yeah, where's Trevor Noah gonna go? Like, who's gonna pick him up? Like, you know, I don't know. It's interesting.
When did he start on there? It was 2015.
2015. Okay.
Yeah, it was right after. So the late night show that I worked on, Totally Biased with W. Kamau Bell, we were on FX.
Which I really loved that show in the beginning. Like
you did.
That first season was really, really good.
I mean,
I know you're an insider, but
let me think about how to say, you know, I believed in it at the time, because, and it's hard for me to evaluate it now. I almost need to go back and watch some of the episodes now, because I was so thoroughly woke then, and we made it so woke. But I still think it's possible to be funny while woke. Some people don't, but I do. I do think there was stuff that was genuinely funny that will probably, if I watched it now, would still hold up. And we did some stuff that wasn't, you know, we did segments, we did pieces out in the field. We did a sleep study segment and stuff that wasn't woke. You know, we did pieces that weren't, and those were fun, and outside the box kind of things. But I remember at the time there was this was when woke was becoming mainstream in entertainment in the late night comedy show world.
That's true.
We did it. And, you know, we were the first, I think, thoroughly woke late night show. All of them had been left or leftist, but they had never really been like, we're embracing social justice. What I mean by that is, like, our writer's room, we would have debates about like the woke stuff that you'd be like, no, well, you can't tell that joke. It's a fat joke. And fat jokes are punching down and we have to punch up. And even though it's Chris Christie and we hate him, we're not going to tell a joke about his weight. Like, there would be arguments about like, and one of our executive producers was Chris Rock. He's not from the woke generation. He's from a different generation. And he would just be like, what are you talking about? Because it was, so anyway, Trevor Noah was hired right when woke was like ascending in the late night world. And I think it's like we're going to get this black guy and he's going to talk about, you know, we're going to jump on the train. Like, I could see them sort of being like, we're getting this guy who's going to talk about race and social justice and be a part and make his race central to it in a way that has to do with social justice. And they were just part of that. Like, I don't know, like, this is the bandwagon at the time. And look, people didn't watch it.
Right.
Like, nobody.
Right. Well, I think, I think that's kind of where you're absolutely right. Instead of, you know, that's kind of when comedy started focusing on not hurting people's feelings when they should have been, you know, like that's 2015, 2016. I argue that's when the last good comedy movie was out. You know, This Is the End. You know, I think you had 22 Jump Street. You had like that. That was kind of like the end of comedy movies. Like Farrell hasn't done anything since then. Like there's, you know, like it's been tough. And I agree with you 100%. Like comedy's only good when you are offending someone, but the secret is not to take offense to it. You know, like that, you know what I mean? Like
Noah, like his personality too, aside from the woke stuff, his personality is such that he just comes off to me just as a viewer like a pleaser. Like, he's too concerned about pleasing people, and that's not like what a comedian is. It's, you know, you go with where the laughter is. You're not like this is offensive on this degree and this is offensive to this degree. You know, it's not about like comedy by committee or being a people pleaser. And I don't know.
Right, right. And, you know, I will give him credit. He did have a couple good jokes in the roast. Was it the roast of Biden? I forget. I forgot the last roast. He did a presidential roast. He had some good jokes in there, but you can kind of tell like other people were writing for him.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean that was his appeal, right? He's not very offensive, and yeah, he's pretty safe. And you know, I don't know. I think, you know, if you look back at the late night shows, especially, like that's when you know, you could get offensive and you could take some risks and stuff. Saturday Night Live, same, absolutely same thing. Like they have not found their voice in a long time. They do poke fun at some of the cultural stuff, which is good, but some of it's just so very, 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 you know, obviously pandering. You know, I can't, you know, and then they fired Shane Gillis, which was interesting because I think Shane Gillis would actually have been someone that could have brought some really funny stuff to the writing room. But of course they, you know, I think he said something about an Asian person on a podcast like 5 years like earlier or something, and they fired him before they hired him. I don't know if you remember that. But yeah, they're in the same boat. Like I don't know how much longer. You know, does SNL stay on the air? I don't know. You know, it's
Who
a
are
tough
some of
one.
your favorite comics, like of all time?
Oh, all time. So people give me shit for this, but I will say Dane Cook. You know,
Oh, okay.
I know he was very, you know, like whatever, he was of the time, but he was always very good. He was good at playing to the audience. He really had some good jokes. But outside of that, like stand-up comics, obviously Joe Rogan, like a lot of people don't give him enough credit. Like his stand-up is very, very good. I think he has 3 on Netflix. He has another one coming out. I think a lot of people know him for the show or from MMA, but like his stand-up's like really, really good. Trying to think, Tony Hinchcliffe is fantastic. You know, like Nick Schwartzen stand-up's actually really good. Nick was really, really, really good. He always did. He was another one that didn't care about offending people. But yeah, I'd have to like sit down and like think about the
Yeah.
rest. But yeah. Nate Bargatze. So if you like comedy that doesn't include, it doesn't have anything political in it, Nate Bargatze's really,
Okay.
really good.
I don't know him.
Yeah, he's kind of like in with like, you know, he was just on Rogan a while ago, so he knows a lot of those guys. But his comedy is like very family friendly, and like normally I always make fun of family friendly comics like Jim Gaffigan and the guy that does the puppets. Like I always kind of shit on those comics. Dunham, was it Dunham? But no, Nate Bargatze, it's really smart. It's really, really smart comedy.
I like
Um,
if
yeah.
you well, family friendly but really funny is Brian Regan. Have you ever watched any of his?
Yeah, Regan's good. He's kind of an OG now these days. Yeah, but
Yeah.
his stuff still plays. I saw him forget where. I forgot exactly what theater it was, but it was like an outdoor theater. I saw his last special. Yeah, his
I
stuff
just
is good.
I just love his it'll always be one of my favorites. His I Walked on the Moon bit just kills me. I
Yeah,
love, Bill Hicks, of
Bill
course.
Hicks. Yeah.
He makes me think of Rogan a little bit, like, his stand-up and really just and also hard to put him in that box of right or left. Um,
Right. Right.
Patrice O'Neal.
Tim Dillon's fucking hilarious. Like these
Okay.
days, Tim is so black pilled. It's really, really funny. He's like, it's funny, like seeing more, like I always kind of joke with my buddies, like some people are like becoming so black pilled where they don't believe anything anymore. Like everything's fake, which is really, but yeah, Tim Dillon's like kind of embraces that. It's pretty funny. He's really good. Older school is Dimitri Martin. I always loved Dimitri Martin.
I forgot about that guy.
He was
Yeah.
so good. Yeah. I haven't seen him in forever. I don't know what he does now, but
Yeah,
yeah.
like, a lot of these I haven't obviously Patrice O'Neal's not around anymore. Norm Macdonald, I love, not around
Oh,
anymore.
Norm
Love Nick,
stand up.
yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
so sad. Yeah, Norm stuff. And you're lucky, Keri, because you have Austin right there. I mean, you have so many up and coming comics in the area. Hans Kim, William Montgomery. There's a ton of people coming up in Austin right now that are really, really exciting.
I need to
Which is
stop being like a boomer and go out more to see new
get
up
out.
and coming comics.
Get out to the yeah, I'm super excited to work with the Vulcan. Awesome place. They have a really cool setup. You know, they do the Kill Tony podcast every Monday. I actually didn't know that. Like when I was booking the venue, because we were looking for something in Austin. And I saw a couple places. There's some great venues out there. This is really boring stuff for the people that don't do event planning. But yeah, there's some really good places out there. But the Vulcan kind of like stood out with
My husband loves that Kill Tony show. Yeah.
Yeah, that's at the Vulcan every Monday. You guys could go, and every Monday, you guys, like, how lucky are you? Like, LA has left. They've left. LA is losing comedy. The COVID destroyed their economy. Now they're losing their comics. They're losing their comedy. Yeah, California's in trouble. It's not looking great. And New York, I would argue too. Like what the pandemic did to all the live shows in New York, it's a travesty, you know, like, I was talking with Libby and stuff, and Libby Emmons, and, she's in New York, she's a New York girl. And yeah, she's, you see the same thing. You have these they still have these like COVID bubbles outside of the restaurants where people can like go outside and sit outside and stuff. That's not going to work in the winter. You know what I mean? But yeah, New York, hopefully we can see them turn it around. But Austin's like super hot right now. Miami's super hot right now. I loved Fort Worth. I love Texas. I love
Texas. I'm biased. I love Texas. But let me put this on the screen, because since you're talking about comedians leaving and going to Texas, this is one of my friends and a frequent guest on our show, Lila Hart, and it's about censorship too. So Lila was a comedian in Los Angeles. She left. They were requiring a vax passport at the comedy club she was performing at, and she has a medical exemption. They didn't care, and so she moved to Texas. Her husband just got permanently banned. I've got this up on the screen. I don't know if anybody saw this. This was this week. Another banning. They have a documentary. I haven't seen it yet. It's called The American History of Voter Fraud, but it's one of the no subjects.
Yeah. So is that like the 2000 camels? Was it the?
I think it's about the most recent presidential election, but it's about the history of voter suppression and voter fraud as well. And I haven't seen it yet, so I can't recommend it yet, but I know Lila, and I think she does great work, and she's very funny. And her husband, they did this doc, and he got permanently banned from Twitter for even talking about it. And she was pointing out, it's like, dude, like Twitter has hardcore pornography, like right here on the screen.
Right? That's interesting. Yeah, that's never made any sense to me. Like the hardcore pornography. It's so, and here's the thing. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I support whatever. If that's what you want to do, whatever, that's totally fine. But it's just interesting that they allow that, but don't allow other things.
Like you can go and see the most, I'm talking about like not softcore, like the most filthy stuff, and that's fine. But okay, you can't have a conversation about voter fraud, or even talk about where to find my a documentary about it. It's just, anyway, you guys go and show her some love if you are a fan of Lila's, or go check out the doc.
Yeah, the voter fraud stuff is interesting. I mean, I went to the recount, so Trump lost Wisconsin, and it was mainly because of Milwaukee County. So Buddy and I went. So they had this big thing. It was like a week long where I think Trump had to pay like $3 million for this recount or whatever. So like we went in, and I had never been to one before. So I was checking it out. It was weird. It was like during COVID too. So like anyone from the public could go in and review the counting process. So like if you wanted to sit down and watch someone, and the public could, raise their hand too and be like, hey, I don't think, whatever. But But it was so weird because they had this huge plastic shield in front of the person counting, and then you had to be 6 feet away from that. So I was like, wait, how? Okay, I can't even see like the names. I can't see anything. They're going very fast too. They're like boom, 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 boom. So it was like really the observation portion of it didn't make any sense. I was talking to the people that were working there, and like most of that is government. So most of them had no idea what they were doing. The people that were counting knew what they were doing, but like everyone else that was working there, they were like, yeah, I have no idea what the rules are. So I'm like, wait, it was the local government stuff. But what was interesting in Milwaukee, like it was like 3 a.m. and I think it was like 300,000 votes came in for Biden at like 3 a.m. So that was, so again, the black pill people, like this is, obvious voter fraud or whatever. I thought it was strange that all of a sudden, it was like 330. You might want to fact check me on the number, but it's like 330,000 votes came in for Trump at 3 a.m. That was strange to me.
For Trump?
For Biden, sorry.
For Biden, yeah.
For Biden, yeah. And that was the difference. That's why Trump lost Wisconsin.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Crazy.
The point is, you don't even have to make a statement of opinion, which you should be able to do, free
Right.
speech, right? But you don't even have to do that. You could just say, I find this strange, like you did. I find it strange.
I thought it was weird.
That has been enough for them to ban people. And again,
Yeah.
I don't know how lax
Right.
they are on this now, if they've lightened up like they have on some of the COVID stuff. But I will tell you, if anyone's keeping track at home, we have now touched on all of the topics
Yeah.
that I need to self-report on.
I tried my best to come on,
okay.
Keri, and just get you canceled. So this is my strategy. My new strategy is just to talk to all the creators, get them canceled, so then they have to stay on mine.
Yeah. You're like, can I come to your show? Let me go on the list.
Yes, let's go down the list. Yeah, so 330,000 votes came in, but they did, and that was the weird thing. And like, this is like, if you're outside of Milwaukee, like this is a huge story inside of Milwaukee. Like everyone outside is kind of like looking in. I remember like I was talking with Jack Posobiec and stuff, and just like how weird of a vibe it was, and like everyone locally like didn't believe it. They're like, oh, it's all BS. But like with the big lie thing, like I think what Zuckerberg actually did for the big lie people is like, yeah, okay, can we say that there's voter fraud? Okay, and some people will say, yeah, there's always voter fraud. It's just a matter of how much, and it's like, I don't know what those are, but like what those numbers are. But like big tech literally shut down a story that could have swayed an election in the guise of shutting down misinformation. So under the guise of shutting down misinformation, they created misinformation, which ultimately affected the election, which is crazy to me. And then they're just like,
they don't care.
Sorry.
And yeah,
Sorry.
Sorry. I'm sure you saw, I've already talked about this before, but I have to bring it up again. Sam Harris and what he was saying about this when it all came out, how he was talking to the trigonometry guys, Constance Kiss and Francis Foster. He was like, basically saying, that's okay. That's okay if they did it, because why? Well, they did it in the service of something good. What's the something good? Well, it's in the service of who I think should win the election, which Sam Harris was against Trump winning. Well, that's completely, that tells me everything I need to know about a person. It's like, no, there's no reason for the media and big social to collude, and the FBI, the government, to collude to bury a story to influence the outcome of an election. Like that should not be happening in the United States.
Yeah, it's interesting, like seeing Sam make these arguments now. It's if you're going under the argument of that sucks, but I'm glad Biden won, that's one thing. But he's literally advocating for misinformation and or propaganda, propaganda. Just because it's like for the greater good, right? He's making the greater good argument, which is crazy to me. It's sad. And he's the atheist, he's the guy that doesn't believe in God, and he needs to have evidence and all of this. And it's like, well,
he believes in himself.
I have faith, right?
He believes in himself, and he believes he's smart enough and moral enough to decide when censorship should happen.
Yeah,
He's smarter than everyone else. Like, that's okay.
yeah. Yeah, there are some people out there that have like the oligarchy argument where they think the smartest people in society should be handing down decisions to people, you know? And it's a weird one. It's like a weird argument. I've had conversations with people where, yeah, that they would want to like elect in like a party of people that are the smartest and the quote unquote best of us, and to make like all the decisions for the country or for people and stuff. And like that's just crazy to me. Like, you need everyone. Like, you need everyone. Yeah.
You guys started, I should point out, Mythinformed, you guys started out having conversations about atheism and different faiths, and are you guys, you yourself are an atheist?
Yes.
Right?
So I am an atheist. So it's an interesting thing because it's like, you know, are you an atheist or agnostic? I could believe if I saw evidence, like if someone showed me something that was like, hey, so I've kind of been using this like in the UFO, like the UFO world now. So like there's actually like this new trend, like a lot of people like coming on board the UFO stuff. Like it's a similar argument to me where it's like, if I could see the thing, then I would believe in it. I'm not saying aliens don't exist, but like for everyone, I think it's just helpful for everyone to kind of see that. But yeah, that's kind of how I've always operated. But I've a lot, in Mythinformed, we have people that are, deist. We have people that are spiritual, that just not religious. We have people that are Catholic. We run the gamut. So I kind of work with everyone.
Yeah, you guys do work with everyone, and you're what have you, like, from your perspective, what's been happening the past couple of years? Because you guys kind of shifted your focus away from that and started focusing more on this woke belief system. And what have been some surprising things in the past couple of years when it comes to like atheists and Christians and overlap and stuff like that?
Well, that's the interesting thing. It's like when we first started talking about like religion, there's this underlying need for control with like a lot of the the older civilizations, the Romans and stuff. They would use the Egyptians. They would use religions to control the people. So being like anti-religion is almost being anti-establishment. I think in this country, like you see a wild shift in the 60s and the 70s, and then you have the 90s where it's like no longer everyone's like very religious, because I have an issue when religions get too powerful to where they can control speech. Like they were burning, the Beatles albums because John Lennon said that he was more popular than Jesus. And at that time he was, like it was just the truth. He was more popular. But like to burn their albums and stuff, like for speech and stuff, I think we saw a shift. Like after 2001, I think the religion, after 9/11, the religion conversation kind of picked up because we saw extremist version of it. We saw like, the extremist Muslim version of like how dangerous a religion can be. And I think that kind of started, that is like the Sam Harris, like the Four Horsemen they were called back then. That's where they came from. It was him, Hitchens. I'm forgetting the other two, forgive me. But yeah, that was when that conversation started.
Dawkins.
Yeah, Dawkins and the older guy, I always forget his name, white-haired, whatever. But yeah, so that's when that conversation was happening. And I was younger then, a lot younger. So I grew up without religion, so I never really cared to think about it ever. But then, you kind of see this with 9/11, and we talk about propaganda, and I thought I was crazy in 9/11. Like I understood why we went into Afghanistan initially. I never understood why we went into Iraq. So I was still like that anti-establishment, anti-war liberal that I didn't think we should be going, like I didn't think we should be going to Iraq. I didn't think, Afghanistan was a huge failure. But yeah, so then that conversation started happening with with Islam, and I just got into it more. And then like when I get into something, I want to like learn the backstory. So I I became a pretty big nerd about it. I started reading like books about like the origins of religion. I started seeing kind of how they were formed and who adopted what and why it was such a powerful tool and how different civilizations use them, how, like how our form of Christianity that we have kind of resembles what we used to have, but not really. But yeah, so I started getting into it. And yeah, there was these conversations taking place between religious people and atheists. And that was cool to see, but trust me, this is not me trying to make up anything, but like, so there was like this community of people, like the Four Horsemen. You had these conferences that started like popping up, so we would go to these events and we talk to people, and then we kind of started like, we were just like, hey, like we'll give it a shot, it's our hobby, we'll do our own. But it was so weird. I'd say it was 2016 when we brought Carl Benjamin to have that discussion with Thomas Smith. Before that, all the topics were like, Christianity versus whatever. What is atheism, or what is an atheist, or blah, 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 blah. That was the first time we wanted to have like a cultural, like a cultural trending topic discussion between just two individuals. And we had no idea like what was building around us. Like, there was there was this ideology that came out, and we didn't understand it at first. Like, we didn't have James Lindsay to explain like how it came up through the universities. Like James, this is like early James. Like James was like kind of getting involved on the back end, but like we didn't have that knowledge. So, but I did start noticing like people would like disinvite people and like say, oh, I don't like the way they think, or I don't like the words they say and stuff. And it was crazy. And it was like built out of community that was like based on asking tough questions. And like when you're asking a Christian person to challenging their faith, that's a tough question for someone, or, someone's whatever, Jewish, whatever. Those are tough conversations. So it was so weird that this like authoritarian ideology started coming out of this world. And so when we did MythCon 4, so like Conservapedia credits us for destroying like that atheist community because we had Thomas and Carl speak. But yeah, after that, like all the big name atheists like canceled. That was our first cancel. Like I always say, like we collect cancellations like Pokemon, like we're always getting canceled. But that was our first cancellation, where it was like you had all these big organizations that came out against us and saying we were Nazis and white supremacists and all this stuff. And they went after our venues. They like I had to have a board meeting with one of this major venues in Milwaukee, where they accused us of being Nazis and white supremacists, and just based on
that's when you guys got into like the real, like, this is what's happening right now. And
so we were born into the fire. So we were like, we made a decision at that point, or, we had to have, because it was getting scary. Like they were coming at our jobs, they were coming after everything. And we had to make a decision at that point to be like, no, flip them off and say, no, we're going to continue to do this. Obviously you can't tell us what to do. It's that anti, establishment lefty in me that I was like, no, I'm not going to be bullied. So so that was the end of like the atheist stuff, because they just completely shunned us.
But this is the bigger, it's been so interesting to me. The reason I asked that question in the past couple of years is to find significant overlap with atheists, like a lot of the people that do the Mythinformed conferences, like James Lindsay. I had James Lindsay on with my pastor recently, have a conversation, and it's like they agree on almost everything. It's so fascinating to me what's been happening, of like, just like right and left, it doesn't really concern me anymore. A debate about like atheism versus Christianity. I mean, it's interesting to me. It's just, it's not the most pressing thing when I meet a person. I also recognize that we may agree on most everything, and they have some barrier left to, like you were saying, I need evidence, like some barrier left to like a belief in God. And that's none of my business. I don't view it as my business anyway. It's not like, let me tell you, Sean.
Right.
Like,
Right.
somebody
No, but
in the
there
chat.
and there
Yeah,
are there are I mean there are some of those religious people that think it's
that's
their
true.
duty to save the world, and obviously that's utilized a lot by like Mormons and Scientologists and kind of like more of the smaller religions. Like you don't see the big like Jewish people don't even want you joining. Like they're just like get out of, you know what I mean? Like but yeah, no, and I was always uncomfortable, like, because I'm also like someone that doesn't like being lumped in the categories. So like
Yeah.
being like in the atheist community always sounded like a cult to me. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was everything we're supposed to be against. But yeah, and then yeah, when they started having that collective group think of who we're gonna shun and who we're gonna, it was like, oh my God, this is like literally a cult now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so and I much prefer people that want to come and have discussions, and like since we've left that time, like we've met so many great people that they just love having tough discussions, and you
Yeah.
never know, where they're going to say. You may think, oh, I know everything about this person, and they'll surprise you, and they'll be like, no, I think this about X or whatever. It's interesting hearing conservatives come out now on the Afghanistan war to begin with, because George W. Bush, like that was a big, push from conservatives to weapons of mass destruction and axis of evil and all the propaganda talking points. So yeah, so it's much better. I love the people I work with now. So, like it's all about having these discussions and nothing going off limits,
I love what you're doing. I love everyone I've met at the conferences. It's great. I do want to put up a couple of things on the screen. So we have a little bit of disagreement in the chat, which is great. I love disagreement.
Great.
And the people are usually very civil.
Remember, I'm not a representative of Minds right now. Here's the disclaimer. I'm a representative of myself.
My buddy Sean.
Yes.
That's it.
I love Minds, but if I get canceled, leave them alone.
Yeah. The other reason I was saying, Lissa nailed this. This is why I was saying it's not my business about like evidence, because I agree with her. She says the Holy Spirit provides us with personal evidence, which cannot be proven to anyone else. That's kind of how I view it. When I talk about, some people are interested, they'll ask me about like, well, what is your experience with God? And I fully know, okay, if I tell you this story, it might make you think I'm a weirdo, and that's okay. And there's no way I can prove this. So I'll just tell you, but that's how I kind of view it. It's not like I'm going to people like, this is my concrete evidence. No, it's like,
well, right.
Personal evidence is a way to describe it. It's personal to me.
Right.
So
and that's like my argument with like the UFO conversation. There's a lot of like similarities in it. And it's interesting too, like the further down the rabbit hole of the alien stuff, you start seeing like how some of the messages have been changed by governments, and like how some of the stuff is being covered up, which is weird. So like the more stuff I see that, where I'm like, okay, now we can have a discussion. You know what I mean? Like, like what's something weird's happening? And there have been weird stuff that's happened, historically, but we just don't have it. You know what I mean? Like,
I totally, by the way, just so it's known, I mean, I completely believe in extraterrestrials.
Yeah,
so,
me too. Me too.
Doc Savage, thank you for the super chat. $5 says, well, to be fair, Twitter allows porn and bans the other stuff because children might be watching.
Wow, that's a really good punchline, actually. Wow.
Doc Savage living up to his name. That's savage.
That's really, that is savage. That's great. Chrissy Mayer had at the last one, she was really fantastic. Like her roast jokes are great. I just love roast jokes, even when they're like making fun of you, like that. We need more of that,
We need I love roast. Okay, well, I had one more. This is a question for you from Pirate Tomsky, 5 lira. He says, Sean, what do you think will happen to platforms like Minds if Musk buys Twitter and starts fixing the censorship issues we are seeing now?
Okay, so again, I'm not speaking on behalf of Minds, because we've had, what's going on with Musk is very interesting. My personal take on what's going on with Musk, is he's not going to buy it. And I think he got exactly what he wanted, was to figure out how many bots are actually on that platform. And, they're saying it was a 5%. I think they say 5%. It's bullshit. Like, that's, I will believe with the black pillars on that. Like, that's not, they're just lying. They're just straight up lying. And, now that they're going to court, it will be interesting. I don't know if you saw, I think it was like the Discovery. There was a conversation that came out between Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey. Have you seen these text messages?
No, I didn't see this.
It's fascinating. Like, so they're having these messages. Again, I don't know. Someone put this up. Seemed like it was a really good source. I believe it came out of Discovery with this suit against Twitter, but it was Musk and Dorsey having a text message conversation. And what Dorsey was actually proposing was like a platform like mine's, open source, where, essentially, no one controls a company, and, ways to keep like the some of the corruption out, because Twitter, like I said, Twitter has to report to the top. They still have to report to, Congress and the Senate and stuff. And you need a platform that does not have to do that, and where you can side with, with free speech. So it was interesting. Like, Dorsey was actually pitching an idea of what Minds is like currently, which was very interesting. So yeah, Pirate, if you know Elon Musk, tell him to give us a call. We want to talk to him. He's great. We really love his work. He's fantastic. Nothing bad I can say about him. Yeah. So that's my long-winded pitch to get Elon, leave Twitter alone. Come work with Minds.
I've got a couple of things I just wanted to read out. Well, first of all, this is where you can find Mythinformed on Minds and find Sean on Twitter. Pirates dropped the links in the chat,
Thanks, Pirate.
and we'll also put them in a pinned comment so you guys can find Sean online and find Mythinformed. Just a couple things that made me laugh. Surly Unicorn said Shadowban was Gandalf's other horse. Which is so stupid. Thank you. You get my sense of humor. And then these are two comments that kind of disagree. I kind of think this is interesting. Night Train says Lennon never said that. He didn't mean that anyway. The Beatles were never more popular than Jesus, and people only burn their own albums, not making other people burn their albums.
Okay,
it's true.
So
they were burning their own albums. True, but it's
true. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Keri.
Well, but culturally, I think what he's saying is it was this sort of like with book burning, it's culturally, it's like, let's get rid of this. It's not just, I'm not going to buy the album. I'm going to do this public display of burning something to show that it's like not going to be tolerated in society. Like, we're not going to tolerate the Beatles. We're going to burn their albums. It's a little concerning to me when people do book or CD burnings of any kind. Yeah. That's all. But here's something. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, let's be fair. Like, so I don't know exactly what the quote was that Lennon said. You have to fact check me on that. I could have sworn he said that they were more popular than Jesus. However, it was the religious right at the time that was leading the charge. They were in the press. They were doing these book burnings on television. Like, this was a public thing, and it was coming from one specific area. So, I will call out bad actors. If it's the right doing it, then we need to call them out. If it's the left, whatever. But at that time, it really was the religious right and they had a lot of sway in the country. And
I do agree with Night Train. It's not like they were making it illegal to buy the albums or anything.
True.
But,
yeah, the government.
But there is something about like I don't know. I get a little freaked out when groups of people get together and burn art or
well, it's like going after Chappelle. It's like going after Chappelle on stage, right? We can't. That's not the behavior that needs to be rewarded. Like that.
I just get a little. But then look at this counterpoint, Night Train. Look at this. Adam Worrell says Jesus was never popular. If he was, they wouldn't have crucified him. And then he says, just kidding, making a joke. But actually, no, I don't think this is a joke, Adam, because there's a verse in the Bible that I come back to a lot where Jesus says, the world hates you, but the world hated me first. He's like, and the world hates you because you're not of the world. Like, meaning if you're a Christ follower, you're not of the world. and I think that's true. Like Jesus was killed by a mob. Like he was killed by a mob of people who knew that he was innocent of the stuff they just didn't like what he was saying. They didn't like his opinions. They didn't like what the beliefs he was giving people. So
Yeah, they chose a murderer over him, right? Barabbas.
yeah.
That was, yep.
Yeah.
I read a
So,
lot. A lot.
Yeah. Okay. I really appreciate you hanging out with us today, Sean.
Absolutely.
And we talked about a wide variety of topics, all of which are going to get this video pulled. So watch it while you can.
Yes.
It'll also be
It was my goal. It was my goal to get this banned. So please clip it, take out the worst clips, put it up, say, get this banned. I'll see that as a victory. That'd be great. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do it.
But tell people where they can find you, and if they want to follow you, and if they want to follow the work that Mythinformed is doing now, what's the best platform?
Cool. Yeah. So, yeah, you can check, I think Pirate put in the links in the chat. You can't follow Mythinformed on Twitter anymore, but you can follow us on Minds. You can also follow me, at Sean Fracek on Minds and Twitter. I don't really use Twitter, a lot anymore. I just use my personal account, to put up things to try and test the censors of Twitter. So Joe Rogan, it was interesting. So Joe just had Aaron Rodgers on. And one of the things that we did as Mythinformed is like we would clip some of the Rogan stuff. And he has really, really good takes on some of the stuff. But he had Aaron Rodgers on. So on my personal Twitter, I went on there just to kind of like a big middle finger to Twitter, because they finally got to talk about all the things that they wanted to, you know, with the lab leak theory and all the stuff that Rodgers was getting canceled for, while Rogan was getting canceled for the same stuff. But yeah, I just don't trust Twitter. I don't trust the big tech platforms. Yeah, I think and you're starting to see it. You're starting to see the shifts. People are talking about, you know, Russell Brand just went to Rumble. We're starting to see numbers on the other platforms. And the only way we can do that is like to have that activist mentality where you got to leave the big tech platforms. You got to go to the other platforms and support them. The Supermind thing, super, super exciting. Giving people a way to interact with Keri Smith, with Tim Pool, with whoever it is they watch, Destiny, even whatever. You have establishment people, go, you know, Steven's on there. And like getting a response. It's also cool for the creators too, because there's a feature where we can like the users can request content. So if they're like, hey, Keri, you should do a video on X or whatever the thing is, like they can send you a Supermind, and then you can choose, okay, yeah, I'll do a video on X, or I'll do, you know, whatever it is. But yeah, just a really cool way to support people. We will be in beta starting tomorrow and the next day. So we'll be in beta for a couple of weeks. So the only accounts that can use Supermind in the beginning will have to have their bank account connected. So if you start a Minds account, also connect your bank account. That way you can send Superminds and then also receive Superminds from other people. In about a month, that feature will be gone. Then anyone that's on the platform can get a Supermind. They'll just have to connect their bank account when they want to cash out. But yeah, it's a lot easier to use than YouTube. Like the AdSense manager was always a nightmare for me. I never understood really, you know, why they were paying us, what they were paying us. You know what I mean? Like Minds has a nice little bank thing where you can see how much crypto you can have. You see how much cash is in the account. So you can see it right there, which is really, really cool feature. Yeah.
Do they accept shekels? Because Waffles gives me super chats in shekels.
Shekels.
Shekels. No, it's
like
just yeah, well, I didn't know for a long time on YouTube that, you know, they have a little sign for each currency, and the shekels like emoji looks like some kind of computer thing. Anyway, but it's shekels.
This is a real thing?
Yeah.
Shekel?
Yeah.
Okay,
Shekels.
I thought you're okay.
Not a joke. I know I was joking about the lira, but shekels. Yeah. There's one of my deprogram community members who always does the shekels, and it's like, anyway, it just cracks me up because it looks like it should be Bitcoin. I always think it's like, that should be the emoji for Bitcoin. It looks like computer thing. It's not like a dollar sign or a pound sign or something. It's anyway.
Is this like from a country, or is this like a crypto?
From Israel.
Oh, okay. See, no,
Yeah.
I look completely uneducated. Okay, so they have shekels.
Israeli moolah. Yeah.
Okay. So I should have known that. I'm Dimitri's, my buddy
I
Dimitri's.
didn't know it, so don't
Yeah,
worry. I was like, what is this currency? Okay.
shekels. Well, if YouTube accepts it, we accept it. So
Yeah, okay.
that's good. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. They do
I always
accept
make fun
shekels,
of
guys.
I always make fun of the post-millennial crew. Like a lot of them are from Canada, so I'll make fun of their fake Canadian money. They call them a Canadian dollar. It's like, okay, be
Yeah,
a little
sure.
more original. Like, could have came up with something else. Like, but
Moolah is good. They should have called it moolah.
moolah
Well,
is.
yeah.
But and
Well,
yes,
thank
also
you.
too,
Okay.
yeah. Well, in April, I'll keep you posted. Love to come back on. Love to have you there, Keri. It's right, and you have no excuse. It's right in your backyard. It's right in your backyard. Yeah. So I'll have more info on that soon. That's like early planning. But the date is locked, April 15th, Saturday, April 15th. And it's gonna be at the Vulcan, which I'm super excited for. They seem like great crew there. And yeah, you should get down to that scene more. It's like popping.
I should.
So
yeah. It's a trek now, but I should do it.
How far is it?
From where I'm at now, I don't like to get too specific, but
Sure.
on air, but it's longer than it used to be.
Okay.
But I get down there quite a bit still. I mean, my husband still plays down there and stuff. And it's just parking and everything. And whatever. This is boring.
Yeah.
I'm talking about parking. You guys, thanks for watching today. If you hung out with us, before you leave, there were a couple people who said in the chat, thank you. Davina Duckworth, you're the best. She's always looking out for me. Hit the like button if you like the show. And I will remind you, we are listener supported. You can support us by going to Subscribestar or Locals or Patreon to support Deprogrammed. And I appreciate you being here today, Sean.
And follow Keri on Minds and send her a super mind.
Send me a super mind on Minds. I just went in and I figured out how to do that thing.
Yeah.
So I think I'm on there now with all my tweets migrated too. We'll see. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Cool. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Cool. Bye. The mission statement for the Church on the Square in Georgetown, Texas, is to revive the church, reach the city, and renew the culture. I happened to attend the very first church service just because I saw an ad on Facebook, which is interesting because I know other people who found the church that way, and Facebook has since stripped our church of the ability to advertise. So I'm here to tell the deprogrammed audience, anyone who's interested, where they can find them. That first service, by the way, that was when I knew I had found my home, because the sermons are something that feeds your mind and your soul. Our pastor is Bradley J. Helgerson. I often describe him as a mix between Jordan Peterson and C.S. Lewis. If you're interested in listening to some of the sermons, you can find them all online on the Church on the Square YouTube page. You can also find them online at thechurchonthesquare.org. If you happen to live in the Georgetown, Texas area, you're also welcome to visit with us any Sunday. We meet at 10 a.m. outside right on the Georgetown Square on the courthouse lawn. If it's hot or if it's raining, then we meet in Ken's Guitars, which is also right there on the square. I hope to see some of you there, and thank you very much.